5 important things that I would avoid in terms of getting the best score for my CLAT current affairs section. Now talking about this, can we afford to do these mistakes? We cannot. Now what is this? First one, create a timeline of key events and legislation. Why is it important? As we can see, chronology matters in the passage based question. Map out all the legal and major milestones of every past year paper. Why does this is important for us? You can see an example as well over here. Now when I try to tell you about this, the Aadhaar verdicts that has impacted on the Privacy to Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023. Now when I tell you about this, the evolution of privacy laws in India, and when we try to talk about this evolution of privacy laws, you need to know. So you need to be very focused and connected with the event. Similarly, you can see the key approach here is what? Use the timelines and flowcharts to visualize how laws, judgments and policies connect over time. So don't forget, so this can be like a flowchart, this can be like a tree to remember in order to not avoid or not miss out on anything on the D-Day. Likewise, we move to the second one. What is it? Connect current affairs to doctrines and precedents. Now you don't need to memorize the content, but what you need to do is understand the doctrinal impact of it. Now what do I mean by this? Again, I have one more example to explain it to you. As we can see, the same-sex marriage judgments. Now this isn't about the LGBTQI plus right, but it also reflects the evolving scope of Article 21, which is with regards to right to life. So the judicial enforcing powers, or what are the restraints and people's mindset idea and how has things evolved. Recently in the news we can see a lot of countries accepting same-sex marriages. So that is also a part of current affairs. Now that we know about these things, how can we connect it? Because from an Indian perspective, it can be asked to you. So prepare yourself like this. As we can see, the key approach here would be what? Link key events to legal doctrines, like the basic structure doctrine. Or you can see the separation of power or reasonable restrictions. What are these things? These are the major events and major doctrines or major, important content, important topics of your examination. So prepare accordingly. Next is what? Legal angle in global events. It is required to know about the legal angle in global events. Reason being that our exam is also law based. Now that our exam is law based, it is important for you to know the basics of everything. Likewise, international events often have an Indian legal dimension. If you can see, for example, is what? The Israel-Palestine conflict ties to India's stance on international law and United Nations Charter. So to know about it or to understand this, you need to know about both the angles. Similarly, climate change discussions at the COP28. Connect India's environmental laws and commitments under the Paris Agreement. So how are you supposed to go? I always ask this one thing. How does this matter to India's legal framework? This will not only bring in interest, but you yourself will want to read a little more about it. What is the next one? Go beyond the new focus, that is on why and how. What do I mean by this? So don't just read the headlines. Need to go in depth in order to understand everything. Now if you can see, for example, when we are studying the Women's Reservation Bill, can we explore it to the decade? You need to explore it to the decades that took it to pass the bill. Similarly, how it affects Article 15 and 243D and why delayed implementation raises constitutional questions. So when you're studying some things, you need to also relate it or put it with the different angle. Now the key aspect or key approach here should be what? Analyze cause-effect relationships and real-world impacts. And don't only limit or restrict yourself to only legal current affairs, but go beyond that, go for every topic. Now that I come to the final one, analyze global events with Indian angle. We tend to be asked, or I have personally seen this in my multiple approaches, in my multiple attempts of these examinations, that they tend to ask India's angle in it. So when they tend to ask India's angle, how should you represent and present yourself? Look at the international events that impact India's policy or legal frameworks. So you can see events like Israel-Palestine conflict, you can see something called as G20 outcomes or the COP28 discussions. Now these are major events. So how to prepare ourselves? Pay attention to treaties, agreements or convention that India is part of. So we can see WTO or Paris Agreement. So it is very important to prepare yourself like this. I'm hoping you are understanding this and you won't make any mistake on the final day. Don't worry, don't stress. All the best.